Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Soul Land 2 Peerless Tang Men based on novel. So let's start. The Nightmare Doluo was at rank 91, and Evil Soul Masters had a very difficult time improving after reaching the later stages of cultivation. The Holy Ghost Church had been accumulating strength for so many years, and they had accumulated quite a few titled Doluo. However, transcendent Doluo were few and far between, and there were just several of them. It wasn't hard to see how difficult it was to become an evil transcendent Doluo. Therefore, the Nightmare Doluo was extremely interested in capturing Huo Yuhao, and that was why he didn't hold back in asking Jing Hongchen for help. Aerial battle wasn't his forte, and in terms of direct fighting strength, the Class 9 Soul Engineer Jing Hongchen was much stronger than he was. Huo Yuhao had been observing Jing Hongchen and the other two through spiritual detection. He wasn't worried at all as Jing Hongchen rose into the sky, as the Ice Bear King's strength wasn't something that Jing Hongchen could easily fight against. Battles that occurred 5,000 meters up in the sky were based on absolute strength, as many soul tools would be weakened. Of course, Jing Hongchen had many ways of preserving his own life, and Little Bai wouldn't be able to do anything to him even though Jing Hongchen couldn't defeat him. Furthermore, Little Bai had already accomplished the first step of his task. He should already be retreating, and he probably wouldn't clash with Jing Hongchen. The royal palace was still in a state of disarray at this moment. The blizzard's viciousness wasn't what caused the chaos, as this was the Heavenly Soul Empire's royal palace after all. The structures inside were tough, far stronger than the Sun Moon Empire's tents back in the extreme north. The blizzard couldn't cause much harm if they stayed inside their rooms. Of course, that was also because this blizzard came from 5,000 meters high in the sky. The blizzard's strength would be very different if the Ice Bear King had unleashed it from the ground. The thing that was causing such disarray in the royal palace was the increasingly dropping temperature. Soul Masters would also be affected once the temperature reached 30 degrees below zero, and these effects weren't minor. Normal soldiers couldn't even move around at all. More and more Soul Masters and Soul Engineers appeared outside. It was very difficult to pass down orders in such a tremendous blizzard, and they could only fight against it passively, as they resisted the biting cold. The soul power undulations and spiritual undulations within the royal palace were very messy under such circumstances. Huo Yuhao activated spiritual detection once more, and he avoided the two titled Doluo on the roof as he stretched his spiritual detection toward those areas with a lot of people. He had to find a single target so that he could make a move. An evil soul master's soul power undulations were vastly different from those of normal soul masters, and their auras were different as well. It wasn't difficult to find an evil soul master. Huo Yuhao wanted to find an evil soul sage. Such an individual would be considered relatively powerful and higher up in the hierarchy, so he had to know quite a few secrets. Indeed, Huo Yuhao quickly found his target after his spiritual power webbed out. There were several evil soul masters clustered together amid the chaos, gathered in a room about 400 meters away from him. There was one person who was clearly the leader of the group, and the others all had relatively weaker cultivations. This individual was a soul sage, and he emanated bluish-gray soul power undulations that circled around his body. The other evil soul masters all had 4 or 5 soul rings, and there were 5 of them altogether. That's him. Huo Yuhao's eyes squinted as he immediately made his move. He snuck towards that location in a flash, and quickly came close behind that evil soul master. His eyes flickered as he closed in on the room, and he sent a single strike of spiritual shock against one of the 4-ringed evil soul masters. The 4-ringed soul ancestor made a stifled grunt as he gradually crumbled to the ground. Blood flowed from his eyes, nose, ears, and mouth as he didn't seem like he could live through this. Who goes there? The soul sage roared as he dashed out of the room in a flash and immediately caught sight of Huo Yuhao, who had just turned to run away. An enemy. Evil soul masters were typically quite conceited, even though one of their own had perished. Huo Yuhao deliberately created an image that presented himself in this evil soul master's eyes as a 7-ringed soul sage with 2 yellow, 2 purple, and 3 black soul rings. Evil soul masters always believed that they were invincible against others of the same rank. The evil soul master saw that his enemy was just a soul sage, and he accelerated in pursuit of Huo Yuhao without figuring out his actual strength. The two titled Doluo immediately noticed the disturbance from the rooftop far away, but they didn't move at all. The reason was simple. It was because of the number of soul rings that Huo Yuhao displayed. Soul rings were an absolute representation of one's strength for most soul masters. Their enemy was just a soul sage, and there was already an evil soul sage in pursuit, so these two titled Doluo didn't have to interfere at all. They still had to pay attention to the big picture to prevent any top-tier individuals appearing among their enemies' ranks. Huo Yuhao escaped very quickly. All the surveillance soul tools were severely affected by the blizzard in the sky, and they couldn't lock down on his position, and so Huo Yuhao wasn't attacked by soul tools, because they didn't have a lock on his location. The Nightmare Doluo would never have expected that the vicious blizzard in the sky was meant to create space for Huo Yuhao to escape in this moment. Furthermore, he would never have expected that a blizzard of such an enormous scale was just so that Huo Yuhao could capture an evil soul master, rather than for an ambush. The evil soul master, who was chasing Huo Yuhao, was also very quick. 3 skeletal heads that were emanating dark green flames encircled his body and spurted from behind him. Those flames continuously boosted his speed, and he was slowly bearing down on Huo Yuhao. The Heavenly Soul Empire's royal place wasn't small, but it wouldn't take a soul sage very long to leave its premises at full strength. It would appear that Huo Yuhao using the Ice Bear King's blizzard to trick a soul sage was a little bit overkill. But in reality, Huo Yuhao would have wasted a lot more time and energy looking for an opportunity if that didn't happen, and his current plan was much quicker and more straightforward. The royal palace was a mess in this moment. That was Blizzard's most fearsome characteristic in group battles. Huo Yuhao lamented in his heart as he ran, as he thought about how fantastic it would have been if his snowy dance of ultimate ice could reach such an enormous size. Even if his domain attack didn't possess such destructiveness, simply creating such disarray, while complementing his imitation, would greatly increase his undercover abilities. The royal palace's wall was in front of him, and the soul sage who was chasing him was about 30 meters behind him, in range for most offensive soul skills. There were 2 rows and a total of 8 small soul thrusters on Huo Yuhao's back, and they activated at the same time as they immediately propelled his body forward. Huo Yuhao was like a cannonball as he arrived at the palace wall in the blink of an eye. The evil soul master behind him almost vomited blood. He felt like he was getting in range to attack his enemy, and he was just about to unleash a soul skill to attack Huo Yuhao when he accelerated and escaped his grasp. That feeling was just too hard to bear. Can he really be that lucky? The evil soul sage was furious as he hurriedly accelerated in pursuit. How could he know that everything was under Huo Yuhao's control with spiritual detection, and that it had nothing to do with luck? The truth was that, with Huo Yuhao's abilities, he could use many different ways to shake his opponent off in terms of speed. The reason why he used soul thrusters was because he wanted to conceal his powers as much as possible. Huo Yuhao leapt into the sky as he tapped his foot gently against the palace wall, and bolted out. He didn't go up into the sky, as there were many aerial surveillance soul tools above him. Even though the blizzard had destroyed some, there were still some left. Huo Yuhao found the Ice Bear King with spiritual detection. He asked the Ice Bear King to leave the city first and wait for him outside. That was because Huo Yuhao had already sensed that Jing Hongchen was searching for the Ice Bear King's traces high in the sky, so calling to the Ice Bear King for aid would be counterproductive. The evil soul master behind him was close in pursuit. The 3 large skeletal heads around him radiated green light, and he seemed to be using his full strength as he charged at Huo Yuhao at breakneck speed. A faint and cold smile surfaced beneath Huo Yuhao's eyes. It's about time. There's a lot less surveillance and monitoring outside the royal palace, while the blizzard has covered the royal palace. I have to take him down as quickly as possible. Huo Yuhao turned around and raced along the palace wall. The evil soul sage was about to attack when Huo Yuhao used his soul thrusters to shake him off once more. They would arrive in a relatively spacious area if they continued forward, as the streets close to the royal palace were extremely wide and spacious. They were in the dark of night, so there wasn't anybody outside the royal palace. The evil soul master became even more furious. This fellow is too slippery. Does he really think that he can shake me off within Heaven Do City? Even though he didn't really know how to use soul tools, he was very clear about what the Sun Moon Empire's aerial surveillance soul tools could do. He believed that soul engineers would chase Huo Yuhao down very quickly to help him capture this guy. But for a person like him, who was so arrogant and perhaps even twisted, he didn't wish for others to interfere. However, he suddenly realized that the soul sage who was running away in front of him slowed, and the distance between them was closed in an instant. Is he tired? He can no longer explosively unleash soul power. The evil soul sage was overjoyed. He pointed his right hand at Huo Yuhao, and a sharp howl could be heard as one of the 3 skeletal heads orbiting around him flew out and blasted straight at Huo Yuhao. This evil soul sage's martial soul was very extraordinary. His mother had passed away when he was born from a difficult birth, and they were inside the wilderness. He remained in the wilderness for several days before someone rescued him, and the toxins from his mother's corpse flowed into his body, which caused his martial soul to have such intense mutations. His martial soul became a skeletal head after mutating. Furthermore, he was different from normal soul masters. Normal soul masters' martial souls themselves would evolve and improve as they became stronger, and as soul masters obtained higher cultivation ranks. But his martial soul was extremely peculiar, as he would gain another skeletal head with each extra soul ring. He had only released 3 skeletal heads so far, and that was just part of his full strength. A skeletal head flew towards Huo Yuhao at this moment, and it released a yellow circle from its surface. It was coming right at Huo Yuhao as the skull suddenly opened its mouth, and the skeletal head rapidly swelled as it chomped down on Huo Yuhao. The skull itself shone with intense green light. Huo Yuhao could feel a tremendous force pulling on him. This force wasn't targeted at his body, but was targeted at his spirit instead. This terrifying pulling force seemed like it was going to consume his entire spirit. He lives up to his name as an evil soul master. He's going straight for the spirit. Huo Yuhao was a lot slower than before. Otherwise, the evil soul master wouldn't have caught up with him. He didn't rely on his soul thrusters to widen the gap like before, but tapped the tip of his foot gently on the ground as he spun around. What the evil soul master saw were Huo Yuhao's glowing eyes. Those eyes had boundless clarity, and 2 rose gold beams of light fired from those eyes in the next moment. The evil soul sage felt like a giant mallet hammered on his spiritual sea in that instant as torrential waves stirred up inside his spiritual sea. He howled agonizingly as green light shone from his body while he plummeted from the sky. The giant skull, which had its mouth open against Huo Yuhao, froze in mid-air at the same time. Huo Yuhao vanished into thin air with a flash. He reappeared right in front of the evil soul sage, as he used his left leg soul bones skill, instant teleportation. 1 versus 1, and Soul Master against Soul Master was what Huo Yuhao was best at. Back when he was still on exchange at the Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Academy, he had once relied on his own strength to defeat every single one of their members without taking a single loss. His formidable individual fighting strength was displayed once more. Huo Yuhao used spiritual shock, and even though his opponent was a soul sage and Huo Yuhao didn't use his Eye of Destiny, the evil soul sage bled from his mouth and nose as his spirit was severely damaged. The evil soul sage fought with his life to recover, so that he could regain control of his body. However, spiritual shock wasn't something that was easy to deal with. The evil soul sage stared into Huo Yuhao's eyes that were right in front of him. He felt a chill run down his spine, and only then did he realize that his opponent was probably much less simple than he had imagined. In this moment, this was the first time that he wished soul engineers would come and rescue him. But how would that be possible? Huo Yuhao's spiritual detection was in control of everything, and how could Huo Yuhao make his move if he didn't find the most suitable opportunity? Since he had made his move, how could he still give his opponent a chance to retaliate? Huo Yuhao's 7 soul rings immediately disappeared, as those were conjured with imitation. How could he display his soul rings' true colors for evil soul masters to see? There were still aerial surveillance soul tools monitoring them from above as well. The air around them contorted vigorously, as the evil soul sage groaned once more. Spiritual blast. This was a spiritual blast unleashed right at his head. The evil soul sage was still affected by what had happened before, and he couldn't resist Huo Yuhao's spiritual blast at all as the torturous pain made him cry out painfully once more. Light shaped like a whirlpool appeared above his head. Spiritual confusion, another of Huo Yuhao's powerful single-target control skills. Huo Yuhao would take control until the end, since he started it. Huo Yuhao had always been training in both offense and control. He mostly played the role of an assault-type soul master, but his control-type abilities were more powerful. Even a soul doluor would have trouble tiding through three formidable spiritual-type soul skills used one after another. So what if his opponent was an evil soul master? Evil soul master spirits were stronger than typical soul masters, but that was useless against Huo Yuhao. Huo Yuhao's entire being turned bluish-green. An enormous bluish-green pillar of light blasted from his skeleton. That was the Ice Jade Empress Scorpion's Ice Empress Wrath, one of the two great soul skills bestowed upon him by her skeleton. The evil soul sage no longer had any soul power to resist, and his spiritual sea was a complete mess, as he had been severely injured. This evil soul sage, who had always been so arrogant, immediately became a frozen statue. Huo Yuhao raised his hand and slapped the frozen statue before he disappeared into the air with it. He activated imitation once more as he stored the frozen statue in his storage-type soul tool. Storage-type soul tools couldn't store living beings because there was no air inside. Any kind of living being inside would die, or they would have to break out with their own strength. But this evil soul sage was special. He wouldn't die for a while after being frozen by Huo Yuhao's ultimate ice. At least, he wouldn't need air. Huo Yuhao wanted to leave this place first before dealing with him. Huo Yuhao had accomplished his goal, and he turned as he was about to leave when everything seemed to change around him. The Heavenly Soul Empire's royal palace, which was in disarray because of the blizzard, suddenly quieted down to the point where the silence was terrifying. Even the streets became completely silent, and that silence was the kind as if all sound had disappeared. Huo Yuhao was just about to leave, but he seemed like he was immobilized as he stood there, motionless. His entire body appeared listless. Huo Yuhao wasn't afraid when he was facing an army of a few thousand soldiers, but beads of sweat started to appear on his face within a few short breaths. He tried his best to calm himself down, but his emotions were making him quiver uncontrollably. This pressure came entirely from his spirit, and this was the first time Huo Yuhao had experienced something as sinister as this since he began plying his craft. Of course, the royal palace didn't actually have no sounds, and the chaos couldn't settle down instantly. Everything suddenly grew quiet around him, because he couldn't hear a single person. Suddenly, footsteps could be heard. Just footsteps, one person's footsteps. This was the only thing Huo Yuhao could hear with his current sense of hearing. A silhouette appeared at the end of the street and slowly walked towards him. There seemed to be a dense fog around him, and even a person as powerful as Huo Yuhao couldn't see everything about him. Huo Yuhao felt like all he could see was a patch of darkness, like this person was a darkness that consumed everything around him. This person had never appeared in Huo Yuhao's spiritual detection, and this danger had come so suddenly. Everything was so sudden that Huo Yuhao didn't know how to defend himself. That silhouette wasn't walking too quickly, or too slowly. Huo Yuhao was using imitation to conceal his tracks, but that had no effect against that person. They finally came closer, and he was about 10 meters away from Huo Yuhao before he stopped. The fog cleared, and Huo Yuhao was stunned. He knew this man. If Huo Yuhao had a ranking of the most powerful individuals on the continent, this person before him would be ranked among the top 3 of those who were currently alive. At least, he would be ranked as such among those powerful individuals that Huo Yuhao had seen before. I'm surprised that it's you. If Shishui hadn't told me about your existence, it would have been hard to believe that you'd grown to such a standard after a few short years. The voice sounded old, and there were tinges of benevolence and warmth, as if he were talking to a friend. Huo Yuhao said plainly, I am also surprised that I'm able to see you here. Greetings, Senior Long. Yes, this person who seemed like he controlled everything around them, the person who had appeared before Huo Yuhao, and who seemed to have merged into the darkness, was one of the two ultimate Doluo that he knew of, the Darkness Holy Dragon, the Dragon Emperor Doluo, Long Xiaoyao. He was a man who had once shared a reputation with the Dragon God Doluo, Mu Yen, and they belonged to the same generation. Huo Yuhao's heart sunk right down when he saw Long Xiaoyao. He was very clear that a person like Long Xiaoyao wasn't someone that he could fight against. Long Xiaoyao was powerful to the point that Huo Yuhao couldn't even properly imagine it. Huo Yuhao's mindset would probably have been better if this had happened before he had formed his soul core, and that was because he only understood after forming his soul core how much more powerful Ultimate Doluo were compared to Transcendent Doluo. Ultimate Doluo were humans who could fight against the beast god, Di Qian, whose soul power was entirely presented as soul cores. Long Xiaoyao was clad in black, and his hair was all white. He wasn't much different from when Huo Yuhao had first seen him. The reason why Huo Yuhao didn't expect to see him here was because Long Xiaoyao had never appeared on the Heavenly Soul Empire's battlefields amongst all the intelligence that Huo Yuhao knew about. In this moment, Long Xiaoyao's appearance undoubtedly severed every single one of Huo Yuhao's escape routes. Youngster, I still vividly remember the wager we had. You gave me a pleasant surprise back then, but you have given me so many more pleasant surprises in this moment. You are a soul sage, and judging from your soul power undulations, you're not far from becoming a soul Doluo. Brother Mu has taken in an excellent disciple. Long Xiaoyao seemed to lament a little as he spoke. He placed his hands behind his back and gazed into the sky. Who knew what he was thinking about? Don't mention my teacher. If teacher was still alive, he would be ashamed to stand with you. Huo Yuhao answered coldly. His strength couldn't even begin to compare to Long Xiaoyao's strength. However, Huo Yuhao was not afraid, as strength and authority couldn't bend his will. The Darkness Holy Dragon, Long Xiaoyao, was following the Holy Ghost Church, and that was something that Huo Yuhao held in contempt. Long Xiaoyao frowned and said, "You youngsters don't understand matters of the older generations." Huo Yuhao laughed coldly and said, "No, I do not understand. All I know is that you have chosen to take the side of the Avilders, and who knows how many people you've helped the Holy Ghost Church massacre. Many of the things that the Holy Ghost Church has done are a result of your existence. I really don't understand. At your level, why do you allow yourself to be used by evil soul masters, and why do you help them destroy lives and create calamities? Do you know that if this is allowed to continue, and if the Sun Moon Empire conquers the continent, the Holy Ghost Church's next target will be to take over? When that happens, all of humanity will probably become the Holy Ghost Church's slaves, and they will give their lives and everything they have for evil soul masters to cultivate. Is hell on earth something you want to see?" Long Xiaoyao's expression changed slightly as he said hoarsely, "It's not as serious as you make it out to be. Do you think evil soul masters are born evil? You and a great many other soul masters are wrong on this matter. The truth is, almost every evil soul master deserves pity, and that's because the world shuns them due to their martial soul's characteristics. They have had to go through much pain and bitterness in their earlier days, and that's the reason why their personalities are a little extreme. I believe that if the Sun Moon Empire conquers the continent in the end and corrects the reputation of evil soul masters, everything will be different. They will control themselves, and as for who rules over the continent, that's not something that I'm concerned about." Huo Yuhao laughed, and his laughter was very disdainful. "Yes, perhaps what you said does make some sense. There are many evil soul masters who deserved pity when they were younger. However, they start killing people because they have received unfair treatment, and they use all kinds of evil methods to strengthen themselves. How can that be the right thing to do? I may not know about others, but let's talk about the death god Doluo, Yishishui. I am willing to call her my senior because of my teacher, but it seems like she's the demon king among humanity. You are not allowed to talk about Yishishui." Long Xiaoyao's eyes suddenly grew focused, and Huo Yuhao felt as if his body was held in place by some tremendous power. This frightening strength was pressing against his body, like he was about to be ground into dust. However, he gritted his teeth and held on as he said with difficulty, "Am I wrong? She's the death god Doluo, and she controls the death god pagoda. The reason why the death god pagoda is so powerful is because it incinerates people's spirits when it fires at full strength, while thousands of spirits are burned through every time it fires. I saw it with my own eyes, and from what it looked like, there were at least tens of thousands of spirits inside. That means tens of thousands of lives. How many evil soul masters are there? Every single one of them is a life, but does this mean those people that they so mercilessly slaughtered are not considered lives? Yi Shishui hasn't just been killing people. She has imprisoned their spirits, and she will ultimately incinerate their spirits for an attack, and eventually obliterate them. Are such brutal and cruel methods things you wish to see? Long Xiaoyao fell silent after Huo Yuhao's string of accusations. Of course, he knew that every single one of Huo Yuhao's words was true. Long Xiaoyao heaved a faint sigh and shook his head. I cannot turn back anymore. I am willing to do anything for Shishui, and the only thing I can do now is to restrain myself, so that I don't kill people. I'm not clear as to what the Holy Ghost Church has done, but I do know something. Shishui has told that after the continent is united, there will be a new order, and true peace will only happen when that time comes. Huo Yuhao said nothing more. He knew that he could no longer move the Dragon Emperor Doluo. He stared coldly at him, but he was full of lament in his heart. But he still had some hope. He couldn't fight against the Dragon Emperor Doluo by himself. However, he still had the Beast God's reverse scale on his body. Huo Yuhao had managed to escape with his life from the Death God Doluo's clutches with the reverse scale's protection. The Beast God would naturally appear if Long Xiaoyao attacked him, and he felt absolutely threatened. Furthermore, Huo Yuhao now had his soul core, and the amount of energy his body could sustain was greatly boosted after he absorbed the manifold mysterious ice essence. Killing him wouldn't be that easy. Long Xiaoyao said plainly, you're hoping for the Beast God's strength to protect you, eh? Huo Yuhao's eyes grew focused, but he said nothing. Long Xiaoyao smiled faintly when he saw Huo Yuhao's silent consent. Youngster, I am actually very interested in you. You're so young, yet you can reach such a cultivation rank. That is considered extremely prodigious. Shishui has long told me about your situation, and I definitely won't make the same mistake. In front of an ultimate Doluo, you can't defend yourself, just because you have some protective abilities. Furthermore, Long Xiaoyao suddenly paused, and turned around towards a rooftop by the side of the street. He grabbed with his right hand through the air and said, You've been watching for a while now. Come out, lady. The quiet and dark world suddenly seemed to return to normal, and the sounds that Huo Yuhao couldn't hear reappeared once more. Ah! A crisp exclamation rang out as a shadow was pulled from the sky by a formless strength, and this shadow fell not far behind Huo Yuhao. Huo Yuhao felt a little relieved as the pressure Long Xiaoyao had unleashed against him vanished completely. He glanced backwards subconsciously, and this time, he was truly astonished. Just as he couldn't sense Long Xiaoyao's presence, he also didn't sense this person's presence with spiritual detection. Huo Yuhao's spiritual detection was powerful, but it still had a focus. For instance, Huo Yuhao would only pay first attention to strong soul power undulations when he was using spiritual detection over a large area. He naturally wouldn't pay much attention to normal citizens who didn't have any soul power undulations, since these people didn't threaten him much anyway. If somebody deliberately suppressed their soul power in a group of people with the right method, Huo Yuhao would have a hard time finding them. But if his opponent wanted to attack him, his opponent would have to channel soul power and come closer to him. There was only one reason why he didn't discover this person, and that was because this person was sufficiently familiar with him. This person knew about his spiritual detection, and this person had been hiding in the street beside the royal palace while concealing her soul power. She didn't make any moves at all. Why are you here? Huo Yuhao's voice was actually trembling, in contrast to his calmness before. He wasn't afraid at all if he faced against the Dragon Emperor Doluo by himself. The worst that could happen was death, and he had been at the borders of death countless times. But he could no longer keep his cool as he stared at this person in front of him, and that was because she looked identical to Donga. She was Tang Wutong. Tang Wutong didn't land on the ground stably, but she wasn't wretched enough to fall face first into the ground. The darkness holy dragon was still merciful against girls. She stood up and stared calmly at Huo Yuhao. Why can't I be here? The corner of Huo Yuhao's mouth curved into a forced smile. There was nothing more to be said. They were facing the darkness holy dragon. How could they just run away even if they wanted to? There was no more meaning to pursuing the reason behind why Tang Wutong was here. Long Xiaoyao smiled and said, "What a pretty little girl. She has been hiding by the side for a while, and she has considered attacking me more than once after I showed up, but she just couldn't find an opportunity. With her around, I trust your beast god's powers won't be that effective. Let's find another place. This place is too noisy." Long Xiaoyao waved his hand as he spoke, and everything descended into silence and darkness once more. Huo Yuhao and Tang Wutong immediately felt a terrifying soul power undulation rise up in the next moment. This wave of soul power poured out in all directions, with them at the center. That formidable soul power was filled with darkness, but it was impossible to fight against. The soul power swept them up as the space around them began to contort. Huo Yuhao wanted to use spiritual detection to investigate what was going on, but his spiritual power couldn't leave his body at all. Is this an ultimate Doluo's power? Huo Yuhao's cultivation was far from sufficient. However, he had encountered many top-tier individuals before, and his senses were extremely powerful. Huo Yuhao could faintly feel that the darkness holy dragon's cultivation was probably higher than Yishishure's. They were both ultimate Doluo, but the darkness holy dragon's pure fighting strength was probably stronger. He wondered if his teacher was stronger than the darkness holy dragon when he was in his prime. Tang Wutong subconsciously arrived beside Huo Yuhao, and she grabbed his arm nervously. Huo Yuhao turned back towards her, as he channeled his soul power to protect them. Tang Wutong looked at him and asked, "Do you really want to know why I'm here?" Huo Yuhao forced a laugh and said, "Do you really think that holds any meaning anymore? Why didn't you run when you saw the darkness holy dragon?" "Why should I run?" Tang Wutong said plainly, "Furthermore, do you really think I can escape? His senses are different from your spiritual detection. You detect things as a whole, but his senses are very fine and delicate. When he appeared and discovered you while you were using imitation, he naturally discovered me as well. I couldn't escape even if I wanted to." Huo Yuhao heaved a sigh and said, "Then why did you come?" Tang Wutong said, "Eldest senior brother was worried about you, and after Xiaoyao returned, he asked someone to go and bring you to go back as quickly as possible. He didn't want you to continue searching for Tang Wutong, and I am the messenger. I heard Nan Xiaoyao's report about your travels, and I figured that you'd be looking for intel inside Heaven Do City, so here I am. I just heard about that tremendous explosion inside the royal palace, so I began to search for your tracks. See, I've only managed to find you now." Huo Yuhao didn't know what to say. Could he say that Tang Wutong was unlucky? But for some reason, he felt very safe and secure when he saw her. The darkness holy dragon seems like he has some way to block the beast god's strength. Am I going to die with Tang Wutong here today? That's not so bad. At least, even though she isn't Donga, she looks exactly like her. Tang Wutong glanced at him and said, "What are you thinking about? Are you trying to escape?" Huo Yuhao shook his head and said, "It's too difficult for us to run away in front of an ultimate Doluo. I can feel that the darkness holy dragon is probably stronger than the death god Doluo, whom we've encountered before. Why do you look like you're not worried at all?" Tang Wutong smiled, and her smile was just so beautiful. Her smile was just like Donga's smile, except she didn't have Donga's tenderness when she was looking at him. Instead, there was an extra tinge of courage. Why should I be worried? Will worrying ensure my safety? Since that's not going to happen, then there's no point in worrying. If we have to die, then we will die fighting. This isn't the first time that we've fought side by side. This video will end here.